Many thanks to DayZ Podcast, Pandemonium, Land Lost, Fetless Traction Village servers, Atlas, Mutated Jurassic Outbreak server, and one original DayZ server for making this video possible. The DayZ devs have opened up a whole new universe of physics on us with the release of the Crossbow bolt this patch, because bolts get stuck inside objects while maintaining their physics and their hitboxes, unleashing a world of possibilities for us to play with. So in this video we're going to explore the potential of these crazy new physics, break down how bolts interact with surfaces, how bolt penetration works against armor, and why you should be extremely paranoid when finding grenade launchers now. All three types of bolt can get stuck inside any surface in DayZ. Even the improvised bolts can get stuck inside metal or concrete, and any of the other 9 surface types too. The flesh surface type down here has a new sound effect added for when a bolt impacts flesh, playing when a player gets hit, infected gets hit, or an animal gets hit. It's possible to recover bolts from every single surface in DayZ, and even directly load the bolt into your crossbow if you have the crossbow in your hands already. Getting stuck bolts from these 8 surface types is very easy, just collect them, but it gets a lot more complicated when it comes to flesh because you cannot remove bolts from the flesh surface type. Now I believe that the sneaky devs have plans to allow us to remove bolts from flesh in the future because there's new code in the game files relating to the pliers, so pliers might be able to be used in the future to remove bolts from our body, from other players, from infected and from animals, but this could just be in the game files because pliers might be used to repair bolts, because there's no way to repair bolts at the moment. Not that you really need to repair bolts, because you can use the worst bolt, the improvised bolt, nearly 1,000 times before it becomes ruined. Whatever the case, you can recover bolts by simply skinning the player's body and the bolts drop to the floor. This can be used on animals too, but you cannot do this on infected. Burying them does work though, so you can bury an infected to get your bolts back, all of which though are quite time consuming. If you yourself get a bolt stuck in your flesh, you better get used to it because there's no way to remove it for now, with relogging and server restarts leaving bolts exactly where they were. The bolts that are stuck inside your body cannot be interacted with by you or other players. I tested this with knives and with pliers, and it looks like they stay in place until you die, at which time you can get the bolts back when you die. Not that they're going to be very useful, but this isn't a bad thing, as you're going to discover later. The penetration power of the crossbow is incredibly weak, not making it through most surfaces in DayZ, and even if it does, the amount of damage it loses travelling through that surface makes it not worth penetrating to kill players. However, crossbow bolts have been given their very own special stat that allows them to penetrate 5 centimeters into every surface in DayZ, with this stat being called arrow pierce depth. This stat, I'm assuming, is used to allow bolts to look like they've been forced into a surface, because a bolt levitating off of a vertical wall would look very unrealistic. At this point in time, I don't believe this 5 centimeters allows you to damage players through any surface in DayZ, so it looks like only the model passes 5 centimeters beyond the start of the surface. Crossbow bolt damage works a lot like bullet damage does in DayZ, damaging items in a similar fashion, such as popping vehicle tires when they're destroyed, or destroying vehicles completely when their fuel tank is brought to 0. The difference is these bolts stick into the surface, creating a model hitbox, a bullet hitbox, and a collision hitbox to move with the vehicle. However, shooting bolts into the grille to dampen vehicle damage from the front, or shooting a player full of bolts to stop vehicle damage doesn't work, so you can't use bolts to reduce damage. This is because while bolts do have a collision hitbox seen here, you cannot collide with bolts that are stuck inside surfaces, so technically they only really have 2 hitboxes, a model hitbox, which is what you can see, and a bullet hitbox, which is what ballistics interact with in DayZ. For example, our characters always have a bullet hitbox around them, which is used to calculate damage in DayZ, so you can effectively block bolts due to their low penetration power and they'll get stuck inside your arm. But this also means that bolts can block other bolts in DayZ because they have a bullet hitbox, which means having a bolt stuck in your body is actually a good thing. Now the chance of a bolt protecting you from a bullet is extremely unlikely, so I doubt you'll have many people running around like porcupines in DayZ now, but this steel tip bolt does deflect low caliber rounds very effectively because of its cylindrical shape, with all bolts reducing damage against you if they do hit the bolt. The best way to protect against bolts though is by using armor that protects against ballistic damage, such as a plate carrier vest, the police vest, and the ballistic vest, but helmets also help too. While wearing armor, damage taken by characters from crossbow bolts is transferred at the exact same rate that damage is transferred from bullets, so yes, you can penetrate plate with crossbow bolts. Similar to how bullets work too when it comes to damage and destruction, bolts can be used to destroy anything that a bullet can, so explosives, landmines, bear traps, place tents and place player structures, to name a few. In fact, due to how many times you can fire the crossbow and reuse the bolts, it may be the most efficient way to raid at the moment because you can fire and reload the same bolt over and over again to destroy a wall. Now while you can't jam the crossbow no matter the quality level of the bolt or the crossbow used, you can jam other weapons using a crossbow bolt. This is possible for two reasons, and the first is that projectiles begin their life at the very beginning of the barrel, as you can see here, this trail, which then can be blocked by a bolt being jammed into the barrel as well. So you can create a way to jam weapons in DayZ, making a grenade launcher extremely dangerous to use if a bolt is inside it. I say this because on my screen you can see the bolt inside the barrel of the M79, which would raise suspicion and maybe you would take it out, but in some cases the bolt cannot be seen by other players due to, I'm guessing, synchronization issues with the bolt and where it's positioned. This works on all weapons in DayZ because all weapons can have a bolt jammed into them, reducing the damage of the weapon due to how slow the bullet would move after penetrating or deflecting entirely off the bolt that's jammed in there. Combining this with the crossbow makes for a bolt that deflects upwards off of the jammed bolt in the mechanism, as demonstrated here by Cosmo, who is one of the hidden heroes of the DayZ community that reports many bugs and has made many discoveries to improve DayZ, including now how bolts can be jammed inside weapons. Whether or not this is going to stay in the game is up to the devs, but they do listen to feedback, so let them know your views on these new bolt physics in the comments below. Naturally, I got a lot of questions about how the crossbow and the bolt works, so here's a bunch of random questions answered before they become myths. You cannot stealth kill infected with a bolt in your hands. I did try all three. You cannot use it as a melee weapon or jam it into a melee weapon to increase the damage or range of that melee weapon, and stabbing a bolt into your hand does not increase how much you punch. Throwing bolts at surfaces or enemies makes it behave much like any other thrown objects in DayZ and doesn't work like a launched bolt does. Bolts can deflect off of almost all surfaces in DayZ, reducing their damage significantly if they hit a target, with improvised and feathered bolts having very high deflection values. Due to how bolts don't have a physical collision hitbox, they cannot be used to block doors or trap players. You can, however, cover interactable objects such as doors with crossbow bolts until the bolts get removed. The maximum flight time of all bolts in DayZ is 20 seconds, so it is possible to kill yourself with your own launched bolt, but due to how the angle is not exactly vertical, it's hard to predict where this will land. Suiciding with a crossbow is possible, and like all weapons in DayZ, when you suicide, it ignores the hitbox of your character, so it can travel straight through you and kill other players. There's so much more to learn when it comes to the crossbow, when it comes to damage, range, and how incredibly stealthy this weapon is. This is not a weapon you want to skip, not to mention how different the three types of bolt are, which you can learn about more in this crossbow guide here. Finally, for this video, bear in mind that the physics that you've seen in this video will probably change, and there's a lot of bugs associated with these physics because it's the first iteration of this. It's going to get cleaned up most likely, so try to go easy on them. You can influence how they're going to get cleaned up or how these physics will work in the future by commenting below. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.